Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to Hilaal Live. Thanks for watching us on channel 347, also on our live stream www.hilaal.tv. Now, coming up to the elections, and one of the concern that most of our communities feel they've not been answered or got the correct answers about is the disposition of land. And we're talking about, years ago during the apartheid era, and that has happened even after that as well. A large amount of our communities have been marginalized since, but today we're discussing about Indigenous communities. And in studio, I'd like to first welcome attorney Ighsaan Higgins. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. How are you?
Alhamdulillah, Jazakallah for joining me. Always been instrumental in these type of topics, and we welcome your insight. And then also Chief Tanya Kleynhans, who's the AM4C from the party, if I can call you. Good evening and welcome to you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Ighsaan, in terms of land that's been dispossessed for many years, take us through what the Constitution says about that.
Well, before I get to the Constitution, I would like to say that during apartheid, during colonialism, during imperialism in South Africa, land has been taken away from people, indigenous people of South Africa. Basically, people came here, from Holland and wherever they came from. And of course, initially they traded with the locals, the indigenous people. And of course, later, they realized it's not worth trading with the locals. They'll just take what they want. So of course, they didn't just take land, but they also took livestock.
Of course. And
they also took farming implements. So it wasn't just about land, it was way more than land. But be that as it may, so there was this taking away of land during that period, that first period of colonialism. But then came 1913, and then there was legislation where large amounts of people, massive amounts of people were just moved away from the original land. And of course, through apartheid, same thing happened through the group areas, etc. So the bottom line is a lot of land was taken away by force. And of course, when the Constitution came into being in 1996, they had to deal with the issue of land. Now, of course, Section 25 of the Constitution, it deals with land. But the first clause, it says that no land shall be taken away from anybody. Almost like there was a kind of a guarantee that people will still sit with the land. Of course, there is a provision made for expropriation, but only under certain conditions.
Right.
And I think people are or rather politicians, are grappling with that particular issue right now in terms of how do you expropriate land without compensation. Now, I don't think it's such a difficult situation. People speaking about you need to change the Constitution, you need to do all these, jump over all these hoops. But within the framework of the Constitution, legislation can actually be crafted to give effect to actually giving back land to people.
Right.
And yet at the same time, I think because there's no political will, I don't think there was political will for the last 30 years to give proper effect to redistributing land to people. If you think about all the people living in squatter camps, all the people that are homeless, people that are cramped up in townships, and yet at the same time, there's so much land in South Africa.
Correct. That's available, readily available.
It's readily available, and it doesn't all sit in private hands.
For sure.
A lot of that land is in government hands. It's in the hands of parastatals. It's in the hands of various entities that belong to the state.
Gotcha.
But at the same time, you also have absentee landlords, people that own land, but they're not doing anything with it.
Right. So we're going to get into some of those topics. And before that, I'd like maybe Tanya to come in with your organization and maybe your role, and especially when it comes to indigenous communities that have been affected by land grabs.
Okay, I'm the founder of an organization called IRASA, the Institute for the Restoration of the Aborigines of South Africa. And we have given our full support for AM4C, the Allied Movement for Change, based on the fact that Honorable Sheikh Imam has been the most consistent in Parliament when it speaks to the rights of the Aboriginal Twe and San peoples in South Africa.
Okay. And what are some of the what were you and your organization maybe instrumental in bringing to light or maybe assisting?
Well, I think we need to start with, and as the learned brother has said, we need to go back to the beginning, begin. We cannot remove ourselves from the fact that dispossession of land, whether it is now post-1994 with the first Land Restitution Act, which is the Land Restitution Act of 1913, that was used as the basis for land reform, land redistribution and restitution. But let us then look at the actual owners of the land. When I say owners of land, those who were here prior to colonialism.
Right.
And that's an irrefutable fact. So we need to dispel this notion, this myth. In fact, it's a lie, a deception, that we cease to exist at some point. We're living generations of cultural genocide, dispossession of land, economic and cultural and social rights.
Has there been any compensation to date? Or is that still such a big fight, still such a big struggle in order to get that done?
For the indigenous peoples, or the Aboriginal Kleynhans peoples, who are divided into 5 groupings, the only group that I would say on record that has benefited in some, it's marginal, I would say, are the Griquas.
I see.
Over and above that, no other grouping has benefited from any form of land restitution in South Africa.
Wow. Very interesting point that Tanya makes, Ighsaan. I know you've been very instrumental in bringing these type of issues to light. What are some of the strides that we've made, if any?
Well, as Tanya correctly says, that some groups have benefited, but the vast majority have not benefited. And government, once again, I mean, they had 30 years to deal with this issue. Now, anybody that has 30 years to deal with something and did not do a good job of it, somehow you need to have a rethink about this issue.
Right.
Because you cannot, it's an unsustainable way of dealing with this. If you get a new government now, and they still go back to what has been now in the last few years, people are trying to amend Section 25 of the Constitution. And at the same time, it's a talk shop. Whilst people are suffering, people are dying. And we're not just talking about rural land, we're also talking about urban land. We're talking a place like District 6. We're talking people like Sophia Town. We're talking Kaito Manor in Durban. So there's many places that these people are waiting and waiting. And it's unsustainable.
Of course.
So what's hampering these things is basically a lack, as I said, of a political will, a lack of giving appropriate budgets for these things, and expertise.
That's a very vital point as well. In your opinion, what are some of the more stringent, efforts that we can do or needs to be done in order for this to happen?
I think you need new ideas, you need new people, and I think like somebody like if Tanya should actually go into Parliament, I think she can make the appropriate noises, whether it's in the portfolio committees, whether it is in the chamber, in the National Assembly, but you need new people with new ideas. Whether it is, some of the people will still be there, but I think it's time for fresh ideas. And I think the people of South Africa, they deserve it.
Absolutely. Coming up to elections, I think we need to have a rethink. And this is one of the issues that we need to rethink about. Tanya, in closing, any last words from yourself, and maybe tell us about some of the work that we can look forward to?
Okay, the United Nations makes provision for political representation for Indigenous peoples. And this is the avenue that we have chosen. There were processes. 2005, we had a special rapporteur here, Rudolf Staffenhagen, who provided recommendations to Parliament. Parliament has reneged on those recommendations. 13th of September 2007, South Africa, together with 143 countries, signed the recognition of the Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. They are to be held accountable.
Right.
And the only way in which that can happen is if we start speaking for ourselves, representing ourselves on the appropriate levels, so that we can have justification for cultural genocide that has happened for generations in South Africa, and it can no longer be tolerated.
Well said. All the best to you and all your future projects. In closing, Ighsaan, for this interview.
In closing, I would say that, it's encouraging that people like Tanya and others are actually contesting this particular election.
Nice.
Hopefully, we will see these faces in Parliament, even if it is in minority parties.
For sure.
There is a space for minority parties. Those are the parties that are going to bring issues to the fore that the bigger parties may just want to skirt over. So I wish Tanya and others in minority parties well.
Absolutely.
And I hope to see those new ideas in Parliament and the implementation for the benefit of all South Africans.
Thank you so much.
Tanya, thanks for joining us. Ighsaan, we'll ask you to stay behind. We've got another interview where we interview another political party and also ask the very similar questions as well. Thanks so much. You're listening and watching to Hilaal Live, and after the break we chat to another political party, PAC, and also put these questions to them and find out about what they've been doing and some of the struggles that quite a few of our communities face on a daily basis. You are still watching Hilaal Live.